lots of wildlife out here. I mean, I'm not saying we're in danger right now, but you know, there's bears in them there woods, Dennis, right back there. So
yeah, well,
and they swim too. You know, we're not. They can swim out to the island here. We're not safe here, Dennis.
Hello, welcome to the Limitless Energy Podcast. And this is a pretty unique episode today because we are located outside of Tom Green's property in Canada. And my guest today is comedian, musician, producer, director, Tom Green.
Hey, thanks, Dennis. This is awesome.
So much.
Great to be here. This is so cool. We've been having a lot of fun hanging out with you guys the last few days.
Well, you've got a great story that ties into a lot of what we're trying to do here, which is promote renewable energy, green living, and how batteries plays into that. And let's talk about, first of all, when you first left Los Angeles a couple of years ago and you decided to go completely off-grid. How did you come up with that decision and how did that go for you?
Yeah, it was right at the beginning of the COVID worldwide global pandemic. And I'd canceled my stand-up tour because all the shows were shutting down at that time, and I'd had a year of touring booked, and I found myself with some time on my hands, and I started thinking about what I would do with that time, and I basically discovered boho camper vans. A friend of mine.
Right. We know them well.
Absolutely, and that's how I found you guys, because they introduced me to Battleborn batteries, and I was, really that was what almost solidified the idea of getting this van and going out to the desert, because I wanted to go out into the desert, and I was living in Los Angeles. I wanted to go into the desert and do some filming, and when I found out that I could actually, and actually was recording music, and when I found I could actually build a recording studio in a van and go off-grid into the middle of nowhere and just get creative.
And you decided to bring Charlie.
Charlie, yeah. Charlie's actually 3 years old. I got Charlie at the same time as I got the van, and I adopted Charlie. She's a rescue from the Bahamas, and she was brought into California through a rescue agency in California called Thrive, which is a cool agency that brings in stray street dogs from the Caribbean and Mexico, and it's actually on Jimmy Durante's ranch in the famous entertainer in San Diego, and his daughter runs this rescue agency, and so I got Charlie, who was not named Charlie at the time, but I adopted. When my dad heard I was adopting a dog and getting a van and going to go out on this sort of camping adventure, he said, "Oh, you should name the dog Charlie, like Travels with Charlie by John Steinbeck." And I was like, I'd never read the book. I read the book, and I named her Charlie, Charley, by the way, which is on Instagram, Charlie the Potcake Dog. Potcake is the sort of the name for the dogs that they give stray dogs out in the Caribbean, and they're called potcakes because the Bahamanian people feed all the local dogs burnt rice cakes, and they call them potcakes, and they're potcake dogs. So I named her Charlie after Travels with Charlie, and we went out in the desert, and I built a recording studio in my van, and really was doing a lot of fun content for my YouTube channel.
And how long were you out there?
Well, because I was living in Los Angeles at the time, I would go out for a couple of weeks, and then I'd go back home and take a shower, and then go back out again. So I was going out into Arizona and California and Nevada and New Mexico, Texas, and Utah, and going to all sorts of interesting spots. So,
right, you were looking to get away from people, to be alone, to be creative.
Yeah, I was kind of just kind of looking to I was really, I've always loved photography. I've always done video. I've always made music, and I've always been interested in technology. You know, I built a TV studio in my living room in the early 2000s and did I called it Webovision, but it was basically an early form of a podcast. Before that, my show on MTV, The Tom Green Show, was me running around with a home video camera doing crazy pranks and stunts, and that was sort of in the early 90s when that started, and was on MTV in 1999, but I started in Canada in the early 90s, and it was kind of a new idea, I guess, to take a home video camera and make a TV show out of it. So I've always been kind of really looking at what's happening with technology and how it could be used to make video and music. And so it kind of all kind of spiraled a little bit. I didn't wake up one day and say, I want to go out in the desert for a year and make music. But it was more like I discovered the van, I discovered the batteries, and built the studio. And then once I'd spent all this sort of time putting the studio together in the van, I just sort of got really addicted to going out into the desert and exploring and finding really amazing places in the desert. So,
Right.
So yeah.
Well, you, of all people, given your history, should understand how this type of portable power and your access to energy can change how you were used to behaving, how were you used to creating content and making art.
Yeah, like one of the first road trips I did when I was starting the Tom Green Show in Canada, before it was on MTV, was we drove across Canada in a Ford Econoline van. And it was myself and two of my friends. And we just wanted to take off on the road to film videos. And but, you know, we'd have to stop every day and charge our batteries up. We'd have to charge our camera batteries up. We'd have to get a hotel room every night to charge, because we didn't have any way of charging our batteries up. So that was sort of, you know, a limiting factor. And so it's sort of surreal to me that you could go, here we're on an island right now. We just canoed out to an island. And you know, we could stay here indefinitely with this incredible device that you've brought here, and it's amazing to me. So it was equally amazing when I was out in the middle of the desert in Arizona in a van and able to charge my camera batteries, charge my phone up. Although I didn't have cell service most of the places I went, but make music. I had a whole recording studio. It was really, really, really kind of an exciting thing, because I find I get a lot more creative when I go places that are off the beaten track, because you feel like you're doing something different. You feel like you're going to a place that not everybody's been before. And so even if you're doing comedy, it's kind of fun to do comedy in a place where the background and the visuals are unique and interesting to people. So it's been kind of a rabbit hole I've really started going down when I got the van, and that's how I ended up meeting you and you guys. So it's been cool.
Yeah, well, given where we are right here, it does seem like you went down a rabbit hole a bit. You were going in and out of LA in a van and going out in the desert, and we're now in rural Canada, and you are looking at getting more access to power, but off-grid power.
Yeah, because we're in sort of a remote area, and I found a farm up here, and after about a year of traveling around in my van in the desert, I just sort of started thinking about my life differently, and I wanted to be closer to my parents, who are doing well and live nearby here. And so I sold my house in Los Angeles after 20 years in Los Angeles, and I found this farm up here, and I have a mule and a donkey now, and some chickens, and Charlie, and we're really enjoying living out and being close to nature, and close to my family, and I'm sort of doing a lot more outdoor country type life activities, you know, canoeing and fishing.
But still active, still filming, still
Yeah, I'm
to
still
comedy and all that stuff.
Yeah, I have a new television show I'm working on now that I'm directing and producing, and a podcast that we're going to be relaunching. I have a podcast called the Tom Green Podcast. When I was in the van, I did a separate one called Tom Green's Van Life. That's also still, you can still listen to that. You can listen to all these podcasts that I recorded out in the desert, in the van. I had Ray Romano phoned in, Brad Garrett phoned in, all sorts of other great people phoned into my show. I actually interviewed Ray Romano, and I think I was in the middle of, the desert somewhere when I interviewed him, or Brad Garrett maybe was in the middle of the desert somewhere when I interviewed him, which was really kind of neat to be able to do a fully, broadcastable production from the middle of nowhere. So that sort of started getting my wheels turning a little bit when I was thinking, I've been living in Los Angeles for 20 years. I didn't really feel like I had to live in Los Angeles anymore. I'm not from Los Angeles. I moved there when I was 29 years old. And I've been there for 20 years, and with not just with battery technology, but with just the internet and everything else has made everything so much more accessible that I felt like I could come back and live near where I grew up and still continue to work in the comedy business just as well as if I was in the center of Hollywood.
Mm-hmm. Well, I did live in Los Angeles myself. I moved away when I was 39, about 11 years ago now, and I was in academia. I was a professor, and I left. I moved up to Reno and to start a company, and a lot of my colleagues thought I was a little nuts to do that, and I'm wondering if any of yours were like, what the hell is he doing? What, is he going nuts? What's the reaction from the industry for you?
It's interesting. Well, I've got a really incredible group of people that I work with, and they're all very supportive of me and what I talk to my friends and I have a manager named Roy. His name's Rory Rosegarten. He's also executive producer of my television show. He produced Everybody Loves Raymond as well. He's one of the great comedy producers and managers, and a legend really. And so he, I asked him. I did ask him before I moved. I said, do you think I could live in Canada? And he said, hey, I live. He lived in New York, in Long Island the entire time he was producing Everybody Loves Raymond, and would fly down to Los Angeles when he was doing the show. But pretty much you can be anywhere you want.
Doesn't matter anymore, huh?
Yeah.
Actually, a lot of folks are leaving Los Angeles and continuing.
Yeah, I mean, for me personally, it wasn't so much about me wanting to leave Los Angeles as much as it was more about me wanting to be close to my family and close to this kind of nature where I grew up. It's very familiar to me. I like fishing and canoeing and being out in the wilderness, and we're still close to cities here. I mean, I could drive to New York in an hour and a half, New York State. I could drive to Montreal or Toronto, and so, or Ottawa, where I'm from, is very close. So it's not like I'm moved off to a cabin in the woods and I'm not communicating with anybody. I still can drive, doing stand-up. I can drive to shows, and it's in some ways I feel like I'm actually less isolated now than I was when I was in Los Angeles, because in Los Angeles I was a 55-hour drive away from my family, and now I'm a 30-minute drive away from my family, and I can get on a plane and go to Los Angeles if I need to go there. So.
Well, it seems pretty satisfying on a personal level. Do you feel any need to talk about this kind of lifestyle on a wider scale, or promote green energy, renewable energy? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, I do talk about quite a bit on my podcast and my YouTube channel, and my new show that I'm doing is going to be coming out next year, which kind of revolves around my life out here in the country. And yeah, I mean, I'm certainly somebody that cares a lot about the planet, and I care a lot about, I like to protect what we have as much as possible. And I think if more people understood that they could get off fossil fuels in some ways, I think that would be not the worst message to get out there at this time. I think we're starting to see, everyone's starting to see real direct impact of climate change now, and we've had a lot of fires up here in Canada this summer, and that's directly affecting everyone, in one way or the other. Everyone's feeling the effects of climate change, and so
Right.
whether you believe in man-made climate change or not, which I understand some people don't believe in that. You could still kind of think to yourself, well, maybe it might still be a good idea, anyways, right?
Yeah.
So,
well, I mean, I
don't want to get all political.
I don't want to get political.
I don't want to
either.
get all political.
Really? Well, I think that regardless of whether you're leaning one way or the other, the opportunity is there. There's a technological opportunity. There's an economic opportunity, and especially when it comes to Canadian and American national security, there is a great opportunity to ensure that we're able to be self-sufficient in terms of how we make electricity, and that turns into an economic opportunity. Like for Dragonfly Energy, we're looking to, for example, onshore the production of the cells, the battery packs, which we do now, and it's our belief that it's going to be a big part in the coming 2-3 decades to be able to do everything in-house. To be able to, by in-house I mean domestically.
Making the batteries and the
getting the raw materials, making the cells, assembling the batteries, and that presents an opportunity. And energy's always been a huge part of our lifestyle. And what's interesting for you as well is you're not getting all rustic in that you're trying to you like technology. You're using technology.
I don't think I am. I mean, I have a recording studio that I'm making. I'm recording a country album.
No, that's the point.
Right now,
you like technology, and you're using that to be creative. So
it's not. Yeah, it's, to me, that's kind of like the real thrust of why I enjoy the technology that we're using here today, is because it allows me to go places that I wouldn't normally be able to go, and to document them with my camera. And it's kind of a neat opportunity, because no one's ever been really able to do that before. To be able to come out here, we're on an island. We could come out here, and I could set up my recording studio right here on this island and hang out here for as long as I want, and write music and make films, and that's kind of going to inspire new ideas that you wouldn't have come up with before. Because sometimes you'll think of something that that you would never have thought of when you get out of your routine. That's what happened to me when I went out into the desert. I was so inspired by just the natural beauty of everything around me that now you're sort of in a more of a relaxed place. Your mind's thinking about things that you're not normally thinking about. You're outside of your daily routine. Not to mention just like putting the studio together and making the technology work for what I want to do. That kind of always has inspired creativity for me. When I was a kid, I was in a rap group, okay, when I was a teenager, and part of the reason I wanted to get into a rap group, I mean, I started rapping with my friend, but the real thing was back in the 80s, you remember electronic music was brand new thing, and so you'd hear this rap music and electronic music, and you go, what do those drums sound different? And it sounded so interesting to me. So I started trying to figure out how they made it, and I discovered drum machines, and I discovered keyboards and computers. I had an Atari 520 ST computer sequencing a Kai S900 sampler and a Yamaha drum machine, and a Roland keyboard, and so all of a sudden my interest in the technology, just trying to figure out how to put all these things together, sort of led me to a place where now I have to do something with it, So now you're making songs. You're making songs that you would have not made otherwise, because you wouldn't have maybe, I was as interested in making the sounds and the things work as I was in actually writing. I was never really somebody that wanted to be a musician. I never picked up, when I was a kid, I didn't pick up a guitar. and learn how to play guitar till much later. I didn't want to learn how to play piano when I was a kid. But as soon as I saw those drum machines and those, the computers, I was like, wow, I want to figure that out. So then in the course of figuring out that stuff, which was really interesting to me, I said, oh, maybe I got to figure out how to make music now. Maybe I have to write some lyrics. So that's the same thing with video, right? You go out to the desert with an unlimited supply of battery, and you go, well, now I've got to go somewhere interesting with this van, which has my studio in it. And so you start looking for interesting places to go that are remote, that you can sort of, I'm going to go try and make a video and record a song in somewhere that no one's ever done a song before. So you drive out to the middle of Utah and to a crazy, incredibly remote, beautiful desert. And once you get there and you're all set up, you go, well, I guess I have to actually make a video now. And then you end up making a pretty cool video because you're filming things that maybe nobody's ever filmed before in that way.
Well, just canoeing up to the shore here on this remote island with all the power in the canoe, I could see your wheels turning, just walking around and looking around, and it would you say it actually has enhanced your creativity, or were you already headed in that direction by making a change like this? Yeah,
well, I remember when I moved here, I was talking to you guys about how I have a barn that's pretty far from power, and I was like, geez, it'd be cool to get some power in my barn, and it'd be cool to get something in the barn that's sort of like what I have in the van, but just for the barn. And so we all started talking, and then that led to the thought of like, well, there's all these lakes around here, and it's there's like millions of lakes in Canada, and it's there's so much water here that you can travel deep into the wilderness and be completely off-road, completely isolated from society in a way. You can go up, it's called portaging, right? You can canoe across a lake, and then you pick up your canoe and your stuff and you walk to the next lake, and now once you've gone 3 lakes in, you're getting to places where sometimes no one's ever been before. Literally, there's places you could go that nobody's ever been before, or very, very few people. So that's always been inspiring to me to try to capture something on film that nobody's really seen before, or go somewhere that's not certainly off the beaten track, And so when you guys said we could make something to put in a canoe, and it really sort of made me think that's really kind of an amazing thing, because you can go so far in a van and you can go to some really cool remote places in a van, but you still got there on a road, and other people will come driving down that road. And but now with the rig that we got here in the canoe, I'm planning on going to some places that I can legitimately feel like I may be the only person that's ever been there, and can stay there for an extended period of time, a few weeks, and fish and write and make films and make music, and kind of just enjoy I feel it's kind of an absurdity. Like I find it's absurd to me to do it, which is also what's inspiring to me. Might not be like everybody's reason for doing this stuff, but to me, I find it's sort of hilarious too, to be able to go to the middle of nowhere and record a country album or make a short film. And if you understand the limitations of electronic media, I mean, you still always have to have power, right? So, to me, if all of a sudden I know that I'm literally somewhere that is so far off the grid that I could never possibly have had power even just a few years ago, or maybe even just a few months ago, who knows? That's hilarious to me. That's like there's an absurdity to that, which is what's inspiring, because I feel like oh, we could actually be doing something that no one's ever done before, which has always kind of been what's sort of driven me to try to do something with technology in a way that maybe we're doing something that nobody's ever done before.
Right, right. And actually, part of what you're doing now, there's sort of you're doing something that people don't expect someone like you would be doing. I think there's that notion that you come out here and you're doing something that you've never really done before, but you're sort of diving headfirst into it, and that alone is inspiring and could inspire other people to be like, well, okay, I've never done this, but it's something I've always been intrigued by. I know you grew up in these parts, but living like this is relatively new to you.
Well, the new part for me is the mule and the donkey. I have a mule named Fanny, and I have a donkey named Kia, and that's definitely very new. I mean, as a kid and growing up in Canada, my dad was military and liked going out into the wilderness and canoes and fishing, and so I did grow up doing a lot of that stuff.
Okay.
And that's sort of something that I've always loved. But it's almost like I had to make a choice. It's like, okay, if you want to be out in nature, then I can't, really necessarily be doing what I like to do with filmmaking and the music and things like that. But now to combine those two things is pretty funny, to me. But yeah, it is definitely, it's sort of new again. I moved to Los Angeles for 20 years, and then you come back and you're sort of relearning a lot of things that you remember from growing up. I mean, and then combining it with the technology is kind of neat. It's really interesting. It's like, I think that a lot of people probably would have a lot more, traditional uses for this technology. I don't think it's like just for people that want to go build a recording studio in the Arctic Circle or something like that. I mean, that sounds funny to me, but I think, I'm just thinking as somebody that if I wasn't doing it for the creative reasons, it's just an incredible thing to think that I could go to a hunting camp or a fishing camp and be off grid and have power to charge my cell phone or my computer or run a few lights or do whatever you would want power for in that kind of place. So yeah, it's I just was amazed that you could actually run as much stuff off of battery power. That was what really shocked me when I got the van. Like, I knew you could have a battery and have a few lights and stuff, but to run an entire recording studio, I mean, I had like 17 different electronic components all chained together into this, compressors, microphones, preamps, interfaces, keyboards, drum machines, lights, video cameras, computers, cell phones, all running off of solar power in the middle of the desert. That was a shock to me 2.5 years ago when I figured out that you could do that. 3 years ago when I figured out you could do that. I had no idea, which was sort of surprising, because I like to kind of understand what's possible. And, so I would assume that a lot of other people who could really use that kind of technology have no idea that it exists.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of old hat for us.
Yeah.
But all this is very inspiring to me personally. So I just want to thank you so much for your time and being on this podcast and for all your hospitality and getting us out here. And
yeah. It's been great having you. Yeah, it's fun to have people come visit the farm and go do some things that you might not normally get to do, explore the Canadian woods and lakes. And I mean, people probably don't even really have a full understanding of where we are right now. I mean, we're not driving home here. We're going to get back in the canoe, and
I think we'll get back.
Yeah, but this island here is Crown land. It's not owned by anybody. We're in the wilderness. You saw my trail cams. I'm at the farm out in my woods there. There's lots of wildlife out here. I mean, I'm not saying we're in danger right now, but there's bears in them there woods, Dennis, right back there. So
yeah, well,
And they swim too, you know. We're not. They can swim out to the island here. We're not in. We're not safe here, Dennis. We're not
Really?
safe. No, it's fine.
Okay.
Bears are more afraid of us than we are of them.
I feel a little overdressed. I wore a button-down shirt. I didn't know
Yeah.
what to expect today.
It's nice.
But,
It's like,
you know, I canoed all the way out here well dressed. So I guess that's how I roll.
It's good, you know. I think there's a lot of fashion in the canoe world now. People are pretty fashionable now with that. You know, you're making me feel bad now about just wearing actually, this is a nice T-shirt. My friend makes this T-shirt, but you know, maybe I should have dressed up too. I should have thought about that.
Yeah,
I didn't mean any disrespect to the show by just wearing a T-shirt. I should have put on a tie or something.
Yeah, well, I think we'll get over it. But thanks for your time, and you know what a great episode. Thanks so much for joining us today, Tom Green on the Limitless Energy podcast.
Oh yeah, and Charlie.
And Charlie.
Charlie the pot cake dog. Look how
can't
good
forget
she's
Charlie.
been. She's all nestled in there with you in the pine needles.
I'm flattered.
Yeah.
She seems to like me. So
Good girl.
be sure to subscribe on any of your favorite podcast platforms.
Thanks, man. Bye.